Alright, how to be social as an introvert. I got my huge pec muscles. Cereal going on. We've got some grape nut cereal, almond milk, and some dark chocolate chips. It's really fancy and pretty. And I got on the back, shows off the back muscles, and I got my belt and my jeans and my boots. This was a requested video from somebody on my Instagram where I asked, do you like to socialize with people, and what's your social life like, so those sort of things. And I think certainly, we kind of all go through a phase where it can be difficult to socialize when you're an adult. And I definitely I'm not gonna sit here and act like I do, because I'm very introvert. I'm an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert. And I don't typically like socialize like friends and stuff like that. I'm very to myself. But I've been growing as an individual, and I wanted to share some things that maybe it will help you if you're someone like myself. I'm going to share a little bit of background for myself to give you some context, and then share, how I currently am. For the sake of the video, I'm going to be very honest here that I am not one to I wouldn't classify myself as like a social butterfly. I'm social in my own way, but I'm certainly not going out to bars or something and socializing. Like I said, I'm very much to myself. Someone like me that can relate to that, and you yourself, maybe you're to yourself, maybe you don't like to talk to people. I can relate. I'm very much like that, and I like to talk to people, but at the same time, it's I'd rather not. I really like to learn, so I'm typically reading online, or outside with my dog, or training, because training takes up a lot of my time. I train 2 hours, typically train 2 hours. I love to shop and travel. Making friends has definitely been a hurdle for me. It's definitely been difficult for me. I can pretty much talk to anybody, which I think is one of my gifts, one of my talents. It just comes from being, kind of in front of people for so long. I grew up, as I mentioned in my previous videos, I grew up a dancer, so I was always, always had the eyes on me, so to speak, so I'm very much kind of used to that. And think you're a cheerleader, or you're a dancer, and you're one of the popular girls, and so everyone wants to talk to you, which wasn't the case for me. I was very always just to myself, and then I typically was really close with just one girlfriend. Pretty much still the case today. So you will rarely see me in a huge group unless I'm really tied to somebody that's next to me. By no means am I telling you have to go out and socialize and put yourself out there, because it's obviously easier said than done, and not everybody is the same. I'll also preface that there is a difference between being shy and being quiet. So people often will say, they told me oh, you're just shy, which is actually false. I'm quiet, which is different. Okay, shy is somebody that typically won't start conversation. I typically will start conversation, especially if I'm by myself. But if I'm in a huge group, I typically stay very relatively reserved. Now, being in, I come from a sales background. I have my kind of approach to selling and sales and talking to people. I just have a snake. I'm like a snake, versus people. Some people are like peacocks, where they walk into the room and they just want to socialize with everybody like a social butterfly. A couple things that really help me, and maybe it will help you on, social skills, and, having 30-inch biceps really helps. In case somebody asks where the bathroom is, you tell them it's over there, Or if you're in the airport, you might get stopped because you're 30-inch guns. The first one is to just smile. So I learned this, working in a gym. Your people have their eyes on you. They're watching you walk around the gym, and I definitely am very serious. Naturally, I'm conscious of that, and I will have a light smile now on my face. I have a light smile. You don't have to be walking around like this all the time, but a slight so that helps a lot. If you're going to a party, just smile very lightly. Even if you're just walking around by yourself, Just like smile and just communicate that you're happy to be there, which you should be. I mean, again, not parties aren't necessarily for everybody, but if you're going to a social event, that I've learned really helps keep me in a good mood, keeps me in that state of being receptive and not closed off. So that's really important. Just smile more, especially if you're around people. Just try to avoid being serious and just like a light smile, like this. Okay. Okay. All right. So number 2, and this will help you tremendously, is ask for people's names. Okay. When you ask for someone's name, they're going to automatically warm up to you. Whenever somebody hears their name, it's like a song to them and it's something that they look forward to. So if you can remember somebody's name, so let's say you meet somebody, always ask for their name. You go up to Bridget and you're like, "Hi, I'm Yelena. What's your name?" And then she's like, "I'm Bridget." I would say, "Hey, Bridget, nice to meet you. I love those earrings," or what have you. Give her a genuine compliment, a compliment maybe on her character, something that can communicate that you've analyzed her as a person, not something necessarily superficial like what I just said. Something like her character, like, "Wow, I really noticed how you're really friendly, you're really smiley with people, and I wanted to commend you on that. I think that's awesome." And then just strike up a conversation, don't talk about the weather. Don't talk about the weather. That's the last thing you should be talking about. But always ask for their name. It'll make conversation a lot more easier. A cereal break. Good stuff. I can feel my 30-inch biceps growing to 35 inches. 3. My third tip is to start to listen more. Okay? When people see that you're listening more, they're going to be much more inclined to warm up to you very, very fast. You would be surprised at what people tell you if you just stop talking and you just listen to what they have to say and have a genuine interest in them. Okay, don't just sit there and stare at them with a blank face and act disinterested. When they're talking to you about something, lean into them and really listen to them. Like, I'm listening. Oh, really? Oh my gosh, that's insane. Really? That's what happened? I can't believe that. Okay, you want to engage with your facial expressions and nod your head and ask them, "Well, tell me more. How did you feel when that happened? Or tell me, how did that change things, and show through your body language, because when people see that and they see that you're engaged, they're going to be more inclined to tell you things. Okay, if you show your emotions through your face, this can be very dangerous, especially if you're trying to really kind of get something out of somebody, like in a romantic partner. You're trying to establish whether or not they're good for you, whatever. Now, that's actually be used for bad, but you obviously want to use it for good and, try to get to know the person. So if somebody's telling you something, you want to avoid sitting back with your arms crossed and leaning back. You want to engage and encourage them to keep telling you what they're telling you. Sit back, you cross your arms. They may start to think you're judging them, and that's where it can get a little bit more difficult, because now they're going to be closed off. They're going to think of you a little bit differently, and they may not want to continue conversation with you. So you always want to reaffirm them, positive reinforcement with a smile, leaning in, listening, and nodding your head, and keep them to keep talking. Your style is of communication, typically they're going to ask you, and obviously you have that decision if whether or not you want to share information about you and your life. That's really effective to showing them with your facial expressions and listening to them, nodding your head, and engaging them with your body language. Next tip is how to say a whole lot of nothing. Okay, so anytime you go on a date, for example, you want to analyze, what kind of person is this, woman or man? Is this person capable of being receptive to what I have to say? Are they in a position and available emotionally for me, or what have you? And this can be applied to friendships, a job interview, conversations at Walmart because someone stole the last piece of broccoli. Okay, whatever it may be. This works perfectly. All you have to do is just exaggerate everything you're talking about and make it seem like a whole lot of nothing. So if somebody's talking about something and they ask you, "Oh, what's your personal life like? What do you do here? What do you do there?" And you're not ready or you don't want to share that information, you don't have to share that information. You don't have to tell everybody about your life story. Let's say they ask you, what do you do on a Sunday afternoon? What's a typical Sunday afternoon? Let's say you want to keep that information private and you're not ready to share that information. I'm so glad that you asked that. I just love to explore life and just kind of take it by the wing and just see wherever the wind blows, like whatever I'm feeling, I go for it. And the most fascinating thing about that is I can just, live life on the fly and just see the lights in the sky and the stars in the sky and just envision this life that I just never thought, I just think about, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think. I just love to think. That's what I do.
An eternity later.
That's actually, I think that's what I do. On Sundays, I just think and I just imagine things and envision things, and that's what I do. It's amazing. Okay. That was obviously very exaggerated and a little bit of sarcasm. I want to be able to say a whole lot of nothing. So, if you ever seen a debate, okay, like in politics, okay, what they typically do is they strategically say a whole lot of nothing because they're trying to persuade or convince you, I should say, because convince is not a good word. Although they could be trying to persuade depending on their character and depending on what their motive is. But for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to use the word convince. To try to convince you that they have a whole lot of things to offer when they don't. Okay, they're using that as a tactic to keep you on the leash. You as the voter, as a citizen of the United States or a non-citizen, whatever. Just doing that, try to practice saying a whole lot of nothing and try to avoid saying what you're actually thinking about. It's very effective if you practice. Okay, so you want to practice in the mirror, just looking at yourself and saying like, oh, well, if they ask you, what do you do on a Sunday afternoon? I'll say, oh, well, you know what? I really love to just look outside and just think about life. And, I'm so glad that you asked me that question. I really love to plan my week and like think about, what I did yesterday and perhaps what I'm going to do next Sunday. I also really love to talk about people and like make food.
A few moments later.
Food and travel. I just love life, I just love to wherever the wind blows, really. I'm really much open. What about you? What do you like to do on Sundays? You see how I didn't really say anything. I just kind of said like stuff. And then I redirected the conversation back to the person. The quick tip. If anybody asks you something that you don't feel comfortable answering or you don't want to answer, all you have to do is ask them, well, it's interesting that you ask. Why do you ask? Okay, but you want to say it in a genuine way and don't say it in an arrogant way. Okay, it's very, very subtle. So if somebody asks you, why were you out from work yesterday? Then you just tell them, oh, well, why do you ask? And then they'll say, oh, because blah, 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 blah. And then you'll say, oh, okay. And then just smile. Now, if that doesn't work, what you can do is just say, oh, I've just, I could have felt better, so I just need some time to rest. And if they pressure you and to get you more details, just say, I just wasn't feeling well, but I'm feeling much better today. Thanks for asking. How about you? How are you doing? Okay, you see how I changed the narrative here? I changed the conversation. I switched it back to them and put it now in my court, essentially, to control it. Okay? Very effective if you don't want to answer somebody's question and, be kind of a slave to them. Because this is another thing with social interaction. Whoever asks the most questions is always in control. Okay? Think of it like this. If you're interacting with a police officer, okay, the officer is the one who's going to tell you, I'm here to ask all the questions. I'm the one asking the questions. And then you're going to massage my 30-inch biceps. It's the police officer that's asking the questions. Why? Because they are the one in authority. And you're the citizen. You're the one that's supposed to sit there and make them a sandwich. So if you can understand that, now when you go into conversations, maybe perhaps you have to have a conversation with somebody that you don't want to talk to, you can just ask all the questions. Why? Because now you're in control. Now, if they try to ask you the questions, again, you can just say a whole lot of nothing, but say it with a smile and say it with an optimistic attitude. Okay, you don't want to show face and you don't want to show that you are in a negative state, because now they depending on their character, they may now sense or feel that now they got you. Okay, now they feel or sense that they can control the conversation because now you're in a negative state, or they said something that threw you off. Okay, you want to avoid being in that situation and just stay neutral, relatively neutral and relatively positive. Okay, just keep a smile on your face, take things lightly, don't take anything, word for word what they say. Even if they say something that's negative or that's going to offend you, just laugh and ignore it. Now, obviously this depends. Sometimes you have to call the person out. Again, this depends on context and the degree of the relationship and the conversation. But for the most part, if they ever say anything that's going to try to, tick you off or what have you, and it genuinely does, make you upset, typically you want to just try to stay reserved and indifferent. That's very effective in any conversation, with any person, regardless of the, the hierarchy of power. You want to stay relatively indifferent towards this person because you don't want to give them a reason to control the conversation. Now, my last thing is I want to fully acknowledge that being social and interacting with people can certainly, especially if you're an introvert, kind of like myself, it can certainly take up a lot of energy, especially if you're not used to it, and especially if you don't like people, because most people they just don't seem to have common sense, and they just don't seem to have the ability to reason. And this is where you have to use your discernment with people and know when to say something and when to not say something. Okay, not every conversation is going to call for your interaction, and that's okay. However, you can interact in the way of you're balancing the power dynamic in between you and the other person, depending on, again, their demeanor, your demeanor, and of course, you're just judging using your discernment to just determine whether or not you're going to be the one asking the questions, okay? Because again, whoever asks the most questions is the one in control, okay? Now, obviously, if it's a healthy relationship, you want to engage and you genuinely want to have a genuine conversation, then you have this banter back and forth or what have you. But for the most part, those are what I find very effective. And again, just try to stay optimistic and positive and just smile, nod your head. And regardless of any social interaction that you have, always keep your head up. And regardless of how the conversation went, whether it went south really quickly or if it went north really quickly, you're having a great conversation, just keep your head up and just know that there's always going to be people in this world that are going to say things that are unnecessary, and you can't let that kind of bring you down. Definitely coming from that sales background where people would say things about me and say oh, who's this girl? She has so much muscle, blah, 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 blah. So I would hear these things from people and dealing with the general public, but I always kind of stuck to my 30-inch guns, and I said, you know what? You're just jealous that I can peg bounce and you can't. Those are my tips on social interactions. Hopefully that was useful. Definitely give them a go. Body language 101. So I'm going to tell you a really cool tip that you might not know. So if you're trying to determine whether or not this person's genuinely interacting with you, look at their eyes and their feet. Okay? The body never lies. And this goes even into attraction. You're trying to determine whether or not this girl or this guy is attracted to you romantically. Look at their eyes and their feet. Okay, if their right foot is pointing towards you when you're interacting with them, from a male to a woman, you can almost guarantee she's engaged with you. Okay, women typically speak face to face. Men speak side to side. So if you are a man and you are approaching a woman and you are interested in her, the one thing you could look at is how is her body positioned towards you? Is she this way and she's talking to you like this? Or is she facing you face to face? If she's facing you face to face while you struck up a conversation, that's a good sign that she's interested in what you have to say or interested in you. Okay? Now, if her feet are pointed that way, my right foot's pointed this way, but my head's facing you, that's not a good sign because she's not engaged with you entirely. Her attention is actually over here, but she's trying to subtly tell you okay, what do you have to say, and make it quick. Okay, so always look at their feet, specifically their right foot. Look at their right foot. If their right foot's pointed towards you, that's a good sign. It has something to do with your mind and your psychology. I read that online, and I think it's very effective. Okay, I'll give you a quick tip. Next time you speak to your supervisor or your job, your boss, or coworker, ask them a question while they're doing something at work. And if you notice that they're trying to help you, but they're also trying to get somewhere else, typically you'll find that their right foot is pointed towards you while they're facing the door. So if I'm facing the door, this is my right foot, this is my right leg, my right foot's facing you, but I'm facing this way, okay? I'm trying to tell you that I'm still engaged with you, I'm going to help you, and when we're done, I'm going to leave, right? So my body's facing this way, but my right foot's facing you, okay? Very effective. Look at the feet. Another thing is with eyes, okay? So this is a sign of attraction. Typically when their pupils are dilated, it's typically a sign of attraction unless they're using drugs. But for the lack, put that to the side. Typically somebody that's attracted to somebody like a man to a woman, or if you see a baby attracted to their, baby looking to their parents, typically their pupils are really dilated. And that is a subconscious cue that they are actually attracted to you. They like what they see because the pupils will dilate to see more of what they're looking at. That's another fun fact. And of course, the last body language is their eyebrows, and it kind of ties into the eyes. But typically, if you're going to talk to somebody, they're going to be interested in you when they raise their eyebrows. So when you see something or someone that you like, you'll see them and then you'll raise your eyebrows and engage. If you're not interested, you're going to be like this the whole time. You're not engaged. You're not really interested. You're just trying to pass the time. Okay. This is why when you're talking to somebody, you want to, say, hey, and then raise your eyebrows and then ask them about them and encourage them to talk about themselves. Very effective. Eyebrows and the eyes, those never lie. And it's a subconscious thing that people can't control, or at least I should say it's very difficult to control, especially if they really like you or if they don't like you.